All right. I'm here with Aggie and Cristy, the hosts of the Prove Her podcast. How's it going, guys?
Going great. Thanks for having us, Steve.
Pretty good.
Yeah, I'm really excited. This is the first kind of three-person episode. So I'm really excited to do it with experienced podcasters to help me through this. So, first, let's start with your backgrounds as to how you guys got into business.
Yeah. So I'm Christy, and I got into business quite a few years ago. I've been everywhere from the fitness industry to working for large corporations as well. And my most recent exit was I was buying franchises in the boutique fitness space. They were all failing franchises when I purchased them. So my job was to go in, reset the entire organization, and make them profitable. We had 10 locations in 5 different states. And after about 3.5 years, we were able to successfully exit those businesses. And currently, Aggie and I are both co founders of Athena Advisory Collective, where we support business owners in helping them scale and exit their businesses.
Nice.
Yeah, I've got a slightly different background than Christy. My background started in incubation, and for 10 years, I got to Jones watching entrepreneurs take technology out of a university setting, put it in a marketplace, and then exit for exuberant amounts. And so started my first company in the cleaning space, exited that one, and then went on kind of a crusade of joining businesses that were maybe not fully into the 21st century, had a massive failure in tech, and then went into F&B manufacturing, kind of a robotics AI for commercial laundry, and then left to or exited to go have a family, and took a sabbatical for about a year and a half, and became an advisor after that, to increase enterprise value. That's, I think, one of our missions with Cristy is, as founders, that should be our one and only mission, is to increase enterprise value, because you never know when exit knocks at your door.
Yeah. Yeah. And let's jump into it. Let's talk about preparedness. I'd love to get into tactical because you guys are experienced on all aspects of this. So for people listening, what are some very key fundamental things to get prepared for an exit?
Aggie, you can go first.
Sounds good. So to me, I just talked about enterprise value. So it's the entire ecosystem of the business. And I think that one of the things that the owner should, or the founder should think about, as they're even conceptualizing their business, is how do I get myself out of the day-to-day progressively? Because I think that that's what adds the most value to any business. Buyers are not on the market to acquire businesses where they will have to do everything and wear every single hat. So as a founder, if you can think about all the things that you can give away to other people and focus on your own zone of genius and do what you love to do, then to me, that's step one to preparedness.
I would add on to that I find the biggest thing right now, we are in the silver tsunami of a lot of the boomer generation exiting their businesses. And one of the biggest challenges most business owners have is, what are they going to do when they've stopped their business? So we call it kind of like their second act. It is really important to have a successful exit to ensure that you know what you're going to do next, whether it's volunteering, mentoring, spending time with your family. That is as pivotal and important when you exit, in addition to the legal side of things, making sure that you have wills, estates, trusts, those kind of things in place as well. So many business owners today don't even have those legal things in place, and it could really jeopardize the business at the end of the day, especially when that, a lot of times, it's your greatest asset. And if you don't have it protected, it could really affect your loved ones if you did get hit with one of the 5 Ds that do happen in exiting.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. Let's double click on the maximizing enterprise value real quick. Aggie, I'm very eager to unpack that. So for people that are listening, let's say they're operating a business for a few years and it's time to sell. Something happens. It's time to sell. Let's say retirement comes up. what are kind of the fundamental pieces that people should be thinking about when it comes to driving that enterprise value, when it comes to the negotiating and getting to the table and some of the things they can do today?
Great question. And I'll start by saying that in order to even be in negotiating shape, you have to have really strong financials.
Mm-hmm.
To me, financials are the spine of every business. And as we know, anytime you talk about valuation and value of a business, people, the first thing that they look at is top line, bottom line, quality of revenue. And by quality of revenue, do you have some predictable recurring revenue, whether it's on an annual basis, on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis, that can fuel your business, not only in the present, but also in the future, and have proof of that in the past. And so your financials, whether it's your revenue and its quality, but also how are you managing anything that's in between those revenues and your bottom line, which is your net profit or EBITDA, and how do you control your expenses? So the financials as the spine is your first negotiating factor at any type of exit meeting, whether you are selling to an individual, you're selling to a group of investors, PE, or to one of your staff members.
Mm-hmm. And
Cristy can
shifting,
add on to that, I'm sure.
yeah, yeah, Cristy, please.
I think you hit one of the major factors. The other ones that are really important that some people don't always tie to enterprise value is human capital and identifying those key players, making sure that they have a seat at the table. And then also culture. It's really hard. As someone who went in and bought failing businesses, I had to reset culture from the start. Without having a solid culture in place, it's really, really hard to get buy-in and to be able to have an asset to sell at the end of the day. And then the last one is really basic, but a lot of businesses don't have it in a way that is easy to duplicate and replicate. And that's having your systems and processes in place in a really efficient way to where they are actually utilized in the organization and really set that foundation. It would really make for a smooth transition when someone is buying the business.
Mm. And that's a perfect segue into mistakes, my favorite topic. So, what are the, let's say, regular mistakes that you see? And then let's give an example of maybe one that you've seen that is a little bit different, like of a mistake that surprised you a little bit.
From the start, I think one of the biggest mistakes is thinking that you're going to keep your business forever. Because unfortunately, Cristy keeps mentioning the 5 Ds, and we'll see if I can remember them: divorce, disability, disease. I can never. There's always one I forget, and there's always a dispute, disagreement, dispute, and there's another one that's kind of like disaster. Life happens, right? So if you figured those out on the back end, but that's okay. There are a lot of people that go into business, especially women, which is why we love working with them, that start a business thinking this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. But the truth is, we have worked with clients who have lost family members. We have worked with clients who have gone through divorces. We have interviewed people in our podcast who have gone through all kinds of areas of life that have accelerated that need for exit for them to be able to do whatever it is that they need to do on the back end. And so when you're not ready, because selling a business is an emotional decision as well, when you're not ready, you're leaving a ton of money on the table. And what I love to say to every single client that we start working with is, when you imagine yourself stepping outside of your business down the line, what do you imagine yourself doing? Do you think about having a big check that somebody hands you for your business, or are you just going to turn the lights off, lock the door, and walk away? And that, to me, the mistake is, when you're not ready, you're leaving a lot of cash on the table.
Agreed. Agreed. So you briefly mentioned it there. The one of the topics I wanted to talk about was women-led companies. I think I've talked about this at length on the pod many a times, how 2 or 3% of VC capital goes to women, and a lot of ideas have been floated about how that changes. But I'm really curious to get your take on what are some things that, let's say, a woman founder that's listening to this show, what she could do to kind of stand out, I guess, in terms of, if she's thinking about exiting, what are some things that could help that you've noticed when working with a bunch of women founders?
I would say one of the biggest things is, first of all, understanding why you built the business, right? A lot of women start a business as passion, and then before you know it, sometimes it becomes something really valuable. But another challenge is a lot of these women-owned businesses really do not pass the $1 million mark. And so the biggest thing is if you want to have a successful exit, you need to know your plan and your path to growth in order to have that successful exit. And a lot of times, women, I will say that one of the biggest weaknesses in women is understanding their financials. So if they don't have that skill set, basically finding people that they can bring in to support them, train them, and grow that expertise for them. So to me, it's really understanding your numbers. And you'd be shocked at how many people have run businesses for 5, 10 years and still don't have a grasp on that.
I'll follow what Cristy said and add on to the fact that a secondary hurdle in the women owned business space is valuing themselves and pricing themselves in order to increase the value of their business. So the reason why only 2.7% of women owned business cross that $1 million mark is very often because they provide a lot of value for very little money. And so this is an exercise that Cristy and I did very seriously when we started our company, is how much are we going to charge for our services to make them feel valuable and really encompass the value that we provide to the business owners that we work with. And when we work with clients, that's one of the first things that we do to increase their revenue, because when you work with a client or you're working with a client towards their exit, they also have to understand that the company that's going to acquire them or the individual that's going to acquire them is going to have a game plan in terms of how much they want to earn. And if it means that they're going to have to provide a ton of services for a discounted price, that's not going to be a valuable investment for them versus investing in premium products or services that really encompass the value that the business provides.
Got it. So high level on this show, probably the number one solution that's come up multiple times is more female entrepreneurs, but also at the other side of the table, more female investors to talk to each other and to connect and transact. That's probably been the number one theme. What, just as a quick take on, how do you guys think that we sort of shrink this gap, the 2 to 3% in capital going to women run businesses? What have you guys seen? What have you heard? What would be some ideas that you've kind of had come across that are just a way to get women funded that are running these companies?
I would say the first thing that we have to stop talking about is that gender differentiation, because I think that no change is going to happen if we silo women together on the investment and the growth space. And Cristy and I are very firm on the way that we advise our clients, the way that we strategically partner with our clients, because we come in as a non-equity partnership format, is the fact that we treat them as a human, not necessarily as a woman or a man when we work with partnerships. And I think that's the one thing that we need to stop talking about. Like, men need to be okay to invest in women-owned businesses, and women to be okay, need to be confident in pitching their companies and pitching their ideas and really again, going back to the value, expressing the value that they provide while connecting that value to the needs of the market. And this is where that storytelling, the reason that Cristy and I started our podcast was exactly that, is because we talk to a lot of women founders, whether it's in the tech or service industries. And when we ask them to compellingly share their value proposition, 80% of them stumble and they don't know, because the first thing that we deal with, and I'm not going to I don't want to talk about imposter syndrome, because I don't think it's an imposter thing. It's just we are ashamed to toot our own horn for whatever reason. And I think it's time for every single woman to come out there and not diminish herself when they're pitching and talking about their business and how they solve the needs of the market that they serve.
Yeah, agreed. I think that there's a lot of interesting conversation around, like, somebody, a male founder, let's say, and I know we were not going to differentiate, but just an idea on the back of a napkin, going and pitching it, just walking into the room saying, "Hey, I got this idea," and the higher probability of getting a check because they're just like more confident around that napkin. And I think that it is so important to kind of say, like, hey, to everyone, but especially women out there that are seeking funding, and to just believe in that napkin, and to go in there into the room, put the napkin on the table, and start talking about it, just because the chances go up. There's probability is there, and just going for it is easier said than done, obviously, here on a podcast, but it just is. I feel like that's such a nuanced piece, and I like that you guys are doing a podcast to kind of get the word out there, because that's really the only way that you can shift that tide, to get the napkin in front of somebody. But I like how it kind of ties into your business. How has it really impacted what you guys have done doing the podcast and Athena?
I would say that the podcast, so our podcast is Badass Women in Business. And so we it actually was our guiding light in kind of creating our niche. So we work with just women business owners and partnerships, because we recognize there's such a need to have the right people sitting at the table with them to make this shift. So that is why we passionately have, put our stake in the ground, that we want to support those women business owners and help them rise up and find these opportunities.
On top of that, we just brought on our new team members at Athena, and we were having a conversation around superpowers and what we would bring to the table for clients. And so, one of the things that you just said, Steve, on the napkin conversation, is also that men are really, really good at the fake it till you make it conversation. I think that men do not need to feel like they're an expert in order to go and have a conversation, even if it's high level, with an investor. And women, we unfortunately feel like we need to be the experts, like we need to have all of the answers. Not that we don't need to have them at some point in time, but it's just the attitude that we show up with and the confidence that we show up with. And it's just top of mind, because that's one of my superpowers. I'm really good at faking it till I make it. And so I've leveraged it throughout my careers, even with investor conversation, because I show up maybe a little bit more masculine forward in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and the fake it till you make it. If there was some, like, if you capsulize that and pass it out to everybody, it would be the key message to get out there, because it's just there's endless ways that you can go about doing something, and it doesn't, you don't have to learn it all at once. But I am really interested in getting back to the culture piece, because you just mentioned it briefly. Cristy, you talked about it, and going into a burning building and fixing it from the inside out is truly interesting. I think it's not really talked about as much. People right sizing the ship after it's sort of kind of going downhill. But what can you share about those broken culture environments where it was kind of toxic, and how did you change that? Like, how do you change a culture in like a burning building kind of business?
I will say it was a learning lesson over time. You know, I took over my first business and I thought, cool, I'm going to try to keep the best key players in place. Then you start recognizing that they have their habits, they have the way they've done things already, and they're not open to change. So I had to learn to pivot really quickly. And every time I acquired a new business, 3 weeks prior to taking over that business, I would go on a recruiting stampede because I realized if I wanted the change, I had to be able to influence those people from day one to create that change and
Mm.
set the tone of the culture. And so it, I never ran into a situation with my 10 businesses where I could keep that same manager in place and have them actually adapt. So that was something that was really hard to learn.
Mm.
And it took me a minute to really figure that out. The other piece on culture, Aggie and I are big believers in utilizing different kinds of assessments to ensure that you have the right people in the right places, and then leveraging those assessments to help grow, coach, and bring those leaders up in your organization. So we use one that's really kind of controversial sometimes. It's called Human Design, or BG5 Institute, and it's basically based off of a birth chart of some sorts that brings out all of your unique strengths, traits, and weaknesses, which really allows us to coach and guide our team members in an effective way. And as we're building our team, we can find areas where we might be missing a certain attribute or trait and specifically hire for that as well, so that we have a really cohesive team. So those are a couple things.
Cool. So it's like a personality test style that goes across, and you kind of know what personality
Yeah.
types go into each seat, and then you can kind of plug in the seats based on your model, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
We
Yeah.
bring the woo in enterprise value growth.
Very cool.
But I
So-
do have to say, you know, since Aggie and I just went through a huge recruiting effort, there
uh,
wasn't a single person that said, "Wow, this is not who I am." Everyone resonated so deeply that it also gave them a sense that I'm joining this team and these leaders understand who I am authentically.
hmm.
So it's really, really interesting.
And the individual, they know like what seat they're in, like what role, because
Yep.
it's very transparent, I'm assuming, with the
Yeah.
personality
Yeah.
Yeah.
testing.
And you
Yes.
can't fake it, right? Because you think about Enneagram, you think about the Myers Briggs, you think about the Colby, the DISC, I mean, the Clifton Strength Finders. I think that a lot of those pre hire tests, and Cristy and I walk into some dumpster fire sometimes when we start working with clients, because the reason that they come to us is I have reached my limit of what I can take.
Mhm.
Managing employees is probably one of the hardest thing that a business owner will ever have to do, because you're dealing with personalities, you're dealing with different types of values, you're dealing with different types of visions, personal visions especially. And I think that when you're talking about tests where you have to answer questions, it really depends on the state of mind that you're currently in, the answer that you're going to give. And let's face it, nobody is objective. We're all subjectively answering those questions, thinking about what does this person that's going to get this test is going to want from me. I've met very few people that have taken a test and done it fully objectively. You cannot lie your way through astrology. You cannot lie. You can't, I mean, unless you give us a fake date of birth and a fake time of birth and a fake place of birth, guess what? You will get the right profile. And it's amazing how people read their profiles and they're like, oh my God, how did you know all of this about me? Down to, are you even supposed to be working or leading a small business? Are you supposed to be working corporate? Because when we are dealing with business owners who are extremely operationally driven and want the structure, but do not have the brains to create the structure, you can either bring people to create that structure for you, but there are people who like to work in community and they want to have all of the resources and thousands of people to rely on. I'm exaggerating, hundreds of people to rely on in order to run their department, and that is their personal priority. Small business is a little bit tougher because there are some things that you have to bootstrap, but from a cultural perspective, you can actually take your time and look at hard skills, hard traits, soft traits in the same level of importance in order to bring the people that are going to get along with you. I think that that's the most important thing for me is, can I be who I am as a human with you? And can you be who you are as a human with me? And can we all get along and joke and be serious, but also keep each other accountable?
And I do like the woo, as you said. I do like that, the angle, because there's a nuanced layer of ownership that's there, in that this is my seat in the team. Like, I have this puzzle piece that fits in. Everybody else has their puzzle piece, and it gives like a slight hint of ownership of that individual seat. That ownership has always been like a huge hurdle with management and leadership, trying to get people to, as you mentioned, Aggie, be accountable, own their mistakes, own their wins, all that good stuff. But like that's a very big hurdle. So I like the everybody has their own contribution to it, and that they can kind of own that seat. Like, I'm special because I have this, you know, astrology component that goes into the team, and nobody else has that. And it's a cool kind of side quest to that wins. I like that. I like that. Okay, so that takes us to the finale. Knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself 10 years ago?
That one was easy for me to think of, especially since we've been kind of hyper focused on women today. I would say it's trusting your gut and truly making decisions from your gut. It's something we have become so disconnected with. And whenever you get that inkling, that feeling, that pushback, you should trust it. And I think it's really important. I just had someone email me and say, yeah, I was totally excited to start working with you, and something just told me not to. And Q1, most of her revenue went away due to things happening in the economy. So by her trusting her gut, she was actually able to make the right decision for her and her business. In the second one, we didn't go into anything today around partnerships, but choose your partners wisely and make sure that you have dated them before you go into business with them. And when I say dated them, make sure that you align on core values and you align on the mission and vision of an organization, and that you're not just saying yes to a partnership because there's an opportunity there.
Well said.
If I had a time machine, number one, I probably would have wished to have met Cristy a long time ago, because we do make good partners. And but I do think as well that we met in a place where we both had learned what we needed to learn to make that partnership a good one. And I think the understanding my value a lot faster than I did, because you always have, especially pricing yourself as a service or pricing your team as a service, especially when you haven't done or delivered that type of service before, can be a little tricky. And understanding how to do it and delivering that value, which is second nature now to both of us, is I wish I would have focused on that sooner, because I think a lot of business owners, when they start their business especially, they think about my website and, you know, my how am I going to organize my drive or my SharePoint, and how am I going to present and do the marketing without necessarily thinking about the value that they're going to be bringing to the table, and if their potential customers or clients even need their service. So matching that need to the value and being able to deliver that to the people that you're talking to and you're hoping to one day land as a client, is something that Cristy and I have become so good at that now we teach it to other people. And that's become like one main focus point for our business. And I wish I would have been good at that a long time ago.
Awesome. Awesome. So where can people learn more about Athena and the podcast?
Ooh, Athena is online and on all the social media. Cristy and I hang out a lot on LinkedIn, so feel free to connect with us. But if not, it's athenaac.com. And for the Badass Women in Business podcast, it is exactly that. It's badasswomeninbusinesspodcast.com. And we are closing on over 100 episodes, so I'm not even sure where we are anymore. We're on season 4, and we have talked to some amazing women and guests.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, wherever you guys are listening to this on iTunes or Spotify, the links that Aggie mentioned will be in the show notes. But thank you both so much for coming on the show and being the first double guest show. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for having us, Steve. And you did an excellent job. So hopefully you'll have
Yes.
more double guests.
Thank you. Thank you.
100%. Thank you, Steve.